With us now, Janatan Sayeh is a research analyst with a focus on Iran at the Foundation for Defence of Democracies. Thank you very much indeed for being with us, Janatan. Good to have you on the programme. So is this a case of the Ayatollah closing the door on nuclear talks with the US?
More or less so, yes. Washington's push for 0% enrichment is about Tehran's capacity and knowledge, as the regime could theoretically simply wait out this Trump administration and restart enrichment like they did post the JCPOA withdrawal. Now, Iranians know they cannot gain these concessions from the United States, and looking how it worked out for Gaddafi's disarmament, they're highly unlikely to give up their nuclear program in its entirety. So at this point, Iran is a nuclear threshold state, which means Washington and Jerusalem perceive this as an urgent threat. Both administrations have been aligned on this issue. The military option is the only solution should talks fail, and it seems like the talks are not headed anywhere.
The Ayatollah's language has become increasingly erratic in recent days. Is this a sign of frustration on his part, or is this more of an appeal to the hardliners in Iran?
It's certainly a sign of frustration. I think him and his current administration under Pezeshkian, everybody were significantly more hopeful. They thought Trump might be seeking a deal, and the U.S. was not as adamant on pursuing 0% enrichment in the beginning of talks. And that's why when you see this escalation, not from the supreme leader, but from all other officials, it indicates that they no longer think they can obtain the concessions that they wanted. And they were hoping for a JCPOA 2.0, and that is not looking likely. So what appears to be the strategy now is to brace for a potential attack led by both Israel and the United States.
The Islamic Republic are experts, aren't they, of running down the clock, keep the negotiations going on as long as possible, drag them out. They know, of course, the American president will only be in power for a certain amount of time. Do you think that they're calculating that they can continue to do that this time?
They were hoping for the best, and temporarily their currency actually did appreciate a bit against the U.S. dollar, but now it has dropped again after the statements made by Khamenei. So that strategy was always meant to be something more short-term. Ideally, I think they were hoping to push the talks all the way until October, which is the deadline for the snapback that would be reinstating all UN sanctions if Europe chooses to do so. So if talks were to end before that deadline, then that would not play out the Tehran strategy that well.
If the talks do fail then, and it does look as though military action, either an Israeli or a joint Israeli-US military action could be on the cards, just how vulnerable is Iran right now?
Iranian airspace is effectively open for Israeli operations. Back in 2024, when Israel targeted Iranian air defense systems, they also targeted Iranian ballistic missile stockpiles. So realistically, a new attack on Iranian sites would also entail a scenario that would prevent provocations from Iran as retaliation. So they're likely to, in addition to targeting the nuclear infrastructure in Natanz and Fordo, which likely requires B-2 or B-52s from America, they would also target different ballistic missile infrastructure across the country to prevent a retaliation from the regime in Tehran. Now, the main question is whether they're going to go beyond these sites and whether they're going to, in fact, target IRGC headquarters, maybe different police headquarters to invoke perhaps an anti-regime sentiment inside the country, or whether they're going to strictly limit it on military and nuclear.
American and Israeli leaders have been careful to draw a distinction between the Islamic regime and the people of Iran. Is there a risk that military strikes could turn the people against the West?
Iranians no longer view this regime as a government or as a system that represents their interests. The Islamic Republic and the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, they're both founded on Islamic principles, and they're inherently at odds with Iranian interests, and at least that's how the Iranian people perceive it. So an attack on a nuclear infrastructure would necessarily be an attack on the regime itself. I mean, from an Iranian perspective, as an ordinary Iranian, if you're sitting in Tehran, the way you look at these nuclear programs is that they have not obtained anything for your life to improve them. So you see them as a regime bargaining chip for them to advance their own ambitions. So from that perspective, I think Iranians are very much, weirdly enough, aligned with Israelis and Americans that this regime does not represent them. The question is if the attack would go beyond these targets and perhaps strike different infrastructures inside Iran, such as ports or bridges, that might be perhaps riskier when it comes to gaining the Iranian hearts and minds.
Janatan Sayeh, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.